So, Representative Ekbaje, would you like to move that House File 799 be recommended to be placed on the general register?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Representative Ekbaje has moved House File 799 be placed on the general register. Please describe your bill, Representative Ekbaje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So the bill in front of us is another bill to expand access to voting for more Minnesotans. House File 799 would allow voters to vote in person on Election Day or during the early voting period without penalty or deduction in wages to perform their civic duty. This bill ensures that should a voter choose to vote on Election Day or early in person, their employer would respect that time to vote in the same way. Voting early in person has been a useful tool for Minnesotans to be able to exercise their civic duty during a time frame that works best for them. It's useful for anyone, but especially employees who may have a deadline, a major project, or they're traveling on or around Election Day. It can also be useful for busy parents who may not be able to get to the polls on Election Day, but can find the time during the early voting period. By clarifying the language in this section of law, people know that if they go and vote early in person on a workday during the early voting period, that they won't be penalized. I hope we can all support this bill to ensure that more Minnesotans are not facing barriers to participate in our democracy through voting. I have some testifiers today, I think, so I will cede my time to them.
Thank you, Representative Ekbaje. I have Beth Gendler and Sarah Lopez who have signed up to testify. Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony. As I mentioned earlier, we are asking people to stick to 2 minutes.
Thanks, Chair Freiberg and members of the committee. My name is Beth Gendler. I'm the Executive Director of Jewish Community Action. JCA organizes the Minnesota Jewish community for racial and economic justice. Our Jewish community is quite diverse, but we are mostly a community of immigrants to the U.S., some first generation like me, and some who have been here for generations. Many of, if not most of us, came to this country to escape oppression and contribute to the democratic values of the American dream. We take voting seriously, and we support all measures that make voting more accessible for all eligible voters to exercise their right to contribute to a healthy democracy. There's also a very practical piece to this legislation. As the director of a small organization with just 9 staff, I personally appreciate the practical benefits that this expansion would provide. If my staff could vote at a day and time that works best for their schedule rather than being limited to Election Day, it would mean fewer interruptions, less disruption to our operations, and more flexibility for our small office.
Thank you, Beth Gendler. Next on the list is Sarah Lopez. Welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Hello, my name is Sarah Lopez. They're members of the Elections, Finance, and Policy Committee, Chair Freiberg and Vice Chair Greenman. My name is Sarah Lopez, and I'm the Director of Public Policy at Unidos Minnesota. Unidos Minnesota is an immigrant and New American-led statewide organization. We build power for Minnesota working families to advance social, racial, and economic justice. Additionally, I would like to share with you that I'm a naturalized citizen, and in 2015, in a room with people from all over the world, I swore an oath to the United States of America. New Americans like myself don't take our right to vote for granted, and I'm a proud member of Unidos Minnesota, where new Americans like myself participate actively in our state's democratic and civic life. And we're proud to say that our work has grown to become the largest Latinx voter engagement program in the state of Minnesota. We're thrilled to speak in support of House File 799, a bill providing the right to take the day off work to cast an early vote. Unidos is supportive of this policy because to participate in our democracy, the working people of Minnesota shouldn't have to choose between putting food on their table and participating in our electoral process. Passing this bill will allow individuals to not lose a day of work, and it reflects the growing needs of our state. Passing this bill will remove barriers for working families, working caretakers with multiple jobs, people of color, working hourly jobs with unpredictable schedules, the elderly, and the disabled. And having more days to choose from to go vote early, spread out over time, will make the ballot box more accessible, especially for rural voters. for whom getting to the polls can be very, very difficult. In specific, for us in Unidos, Minnesota, we're accountable to a statewide base of predominantly low-wage workers. Those workers are trapped in workplace segregated sectors that are more prone to unpredictable scheduling and some retaliation for taking days off. We're thrilled to speak in support of a bill aimed at building a multiracial democracy, and we're excited to make a constitutional right more accessible to all Minnesota voters. So we hope you support House File 799 by voting yes. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would any members of the public like to testify on this bill? Sure. Please come up to the table. Yeah. And just when you start your testimony, just state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony. Sure. Yep.
Good morning, all. My name is Farah Habad. I'm a member of the New Justice Project. I organize with the New Justice Project. And I think ultimately the question of this bill just really is a question of who do we want to be as a society? Do we want to be a society that expands access and allows for the marketplace of ideas to really be challenged by the merit of arguments? Or do we want to be a society that continues to narrow the scope of who we are, who we say we want to be, and only ensure that the individuals that really are able to meet arbitrary rules are the only individuals that are able to really fully participate in the question of democracy. Ultimately, we've shown ourselves to be a state that moves with the good of the people, that expands access as much as possible. And so ultimately, when looking at this bill and looking at the expansion of the 47 days, there really are no unique disadvantages that occur with this economically, et cetera. Individuals are able to expand themselves into really being a part of this question of democracy. And so when looking at this question, ultimately, we need to ask ourselves, do we want to be a people that allow for the marketplace of ideas to truly be tested by the largest possible arguments, or do we want to be a society that constricts the question and constricts what it means to be able to have access?
Thank you for your testimony. Is there any additional members of the public who would like to speak to this bill? Okay, seeing none, we'll turn to member discussion. Representative Bliss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And according to the bill, and this is the existing law, is that you're allowed to cast a ballot and return to work on that day. Your testifier made mention of taking the day off to do it. I hope that's not part of this, and that's really the only thing I had to say.
Okay. Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Bliss. Yes, this is only for, I believe it says, the time necessary to vote. So says to be absent from work for the time necessary to appear at the employee's polling place, cast a ballot, and return to work on the day of that election or during the time period allowed for early in-person voting. So yeah, this is not about having a whole day off. If it takes you 30 minutes to vote, great. If you have a polling location that's really long and it takes you 4 hours, then it takes you 4 hours. But it's really just to accommodate the amount of time it takes to vote.
Thank you. Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And election law, we need to be, precise. And reading the language on line 1.8, I think in order to be precise, after the word absent, we should add once, comma, in order to make that clear.
Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Quam. So this is language that's already in statute. We're only just adding the words on 1.9 and 1.10. Already, a voter, you can't vote multiple times. You can only vote once. The only situation where maybe that could potentially happen is if someone wanted to claw back their initial ballot prior to 7 days from before. But I don't think that I'd have to ask Secretary of State's office how often that's happening. But really, this is intended for you to vote one time.
Yes. Thank you, Representative Agbaje. The Secretary of State is available, I know, too.
Mr. Chair, when it was just election day, it was obviously once. But when it's the entire period, I would just think it's appropriate to make it very clear. And I think election law should be precise and make it clear and leave out ambiguity. And I think that would be appropriate. Is there a reason why the author wouldn't want to have it clear and unambiguous?
Representative Agbaje, I'm not sure it is ambiguous, but Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. Yeah, I also don't see the language as ambiguous. I mean, partially because employers are going to be tracking when people go to vote, and so they'll know when someone has already gone to vote and likely would not approve them going to vote a second time if they've already used that time.
Representative Quam, final follow-up.
Well, I'm sorry that I'm trying to make it clear. Frankly, the original language was 1 day. We're including weeks of additional time with the additional language. And frankly, let's make it non-ambiguous. Let's be clear, because oftentimes we believe we're inferring. And this is a burden upon the worker. So, I mean, it's a real simple thing. And I don't understand why there's a resistance to make it non-ambiguous.
Thank you.
Can the chair explain to me why there's a resistance to make it non-ambiguous if it could be read ambiguous?
Well, again, thank you, Representative Quam. As I said, I'm not convinced it is ambiguous. I'd point out, too, that
Mr. Chair,
if you
isn't
let me
it
finish,
obvious?
Representative Quam,
Okay.
on the line 1.9 in the new language, it does use the word or. So they have the right to be absent from work, either on the work day of the election or during the time period for early voting. It doesn't use the word and. To me, that suggests the only once is already kind of implied in the language. and not
Mr. Chair.
ambiguous. Representative Quam.
Before the or is a 1. After the or are multiple weeks. So you can either do it on that 1 day or on these other days. Therefore, I don't understand why there would be a resistance to making election law very clear and unambiguous. I mean, being safe is better than allowing for ambiguity.
Representative Quam, there was a period to offer amendments. As I said, I'm not convinced this language is ambiguous.
Mr. Chair, did I?
Representative Quam, final follow-up.
Mr. Chair, I never asked to make an oral technical amendment. I'm just trying to understand the intent and allow the discussion so that this bill can actually be less ambiguous. And I take a little bit of umbrage to the fact that we aren't, as members elected to this body, to try and make a bill better and try and convey a weakness or an issue. But I guess if you don't want me to speak anymore, I'll be quiet on this bill.
Thank you, Representative Quam. Yeah, I think you've made your point very clear, and I don't see this as you not having the opportunity to make your point. Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. I just had a question, with the, because we have moved now to the 46, days of absentee voting and early voting. Do you find that this is really a big concern? I know some areas have even had like weekend voting. That's a pretty long time, 46 days to be voting. Are you hearing feedback or have some sort of data showing that this is a real struggle?
Representative Agbaje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative. I think the issue is especially as we heard from some of our testifiers, a number of low-wage workers, their schedules are very tight. And so if on election day you're scheduled to work, which is usually a Tuesday in November, it makes it hard. And so the 46 days gives you that flexibility. The 46 days, I think, was also put in place to support military members, to allow them to vote. So the purpose of this is really to give that flexibility to people and be able to use a time period that works best for them. So if they're scheduled, if they have a looser schedule on a different day that's ahead of the election, then they can take that time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Altendorf.
Just to follow up, I will vote no on this, and the reason why is I want everyone to vote, but I really believe in people, and I really believe that within a 46-day period of voting, that's ample amount of time for everyone to find adequate amount of time to vote. And, sometimes as a government, we just make too many laws, and this puts a burden on employers. And so for that reason, I will vote no on this, but thank you for it.
Thank you. Representative Purcell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative, for bringing this bill. I'm a proud co-author of this bill, and as a person who ran a small business, it was really incumbent on me as the employer as well as the employee to make sure that my employees had the flexibility and ability to go vote. Being a small business, like we heard the first testifier, if we're up against a deadline, a grant deadline, to even step out for lunch or get away from my desk for lunch felt pretty difficult. And on one particular, day in November can be more challenging than, say, the day before, the week before. So my own personal experience to allow the flexibility for employers too, I think this really supports the businesses that want to do the right thing and let their people vote.
Thank you. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Agbajay, for bringing this to us. I just have a question, and my question is based out of just, employers have rights too. And I just want to make sure that, okay, so someone goes to work and they want to go vote that morning, and the employer would say, we got a lot of work to do. The morning wouldn't be convenient. Let's let you do it in the afternoon after the lunch hour. Could that potentially be seen as the employer indirectly refusing or interfering with that person's ability to go vote?
Representative Agbadje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Davis. No, not really. So what's already in practice with the current law, the way the law is written for like election day, say you wanted to vote in the morning, but they needed you in the morning and need you to go in the afternoon, your employer, so they can't really directly like tell you what to do, but they can ask you to tell them when you're going to be off. And then if that time is inconvenient, they can also ask you to try to coordinate to minimize absences at the workplace. So that's not a right that's taken away from the employer.
Okay.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. So what I just heard, and maybe I misunderstood what you said, is then yes, it really is all on the employee. The employee tells the employer when they're going to do it. Is that correct?
Representative Agbadje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, it's more of a conversation. So what it's saying is the employer does have the ability to ask, right? And so I'm hoping that there's a decent relationship between employer and employee. And if the, if the employee says, hey, I want to go in the morning, and the employer is like, no, it'd be really nice if you could go in the afternoon. Hopefully that's not too much of a burden, especially because the employer is still going to respect that time off, whether it's in the afternoon or in the morning. So it should be fine. So employers do have the ability to ask that there's coordination, that they know when people are going.
Okay, so just one more
Representative
follow-up.
Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. So that is what I'm hearing, is that if an employer were to say, no, you can't go vote in the morning, we'll let you go in the afternoon, and after having a discussion, then the employer is in violation of this, would be in violation of this.
Representative Agbadje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't believe that's what I said. What I said is basically the employer and employee are going to have this conversation about when the person can go vote, but the time in general just has to be respected. So if it makes more sense and the employee agrees, then yes. But this is going to take place in the context of a conversation. The purpose is that on the day of the election or the early voting day, should this be passed, then just that time that it takes to vote would just need to be respected.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Coulter.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm glad actually that we've heard from Representative Purcell and others about sort of the employer and the employee side of it, because my comments actually more have to do more with the local elections administrator side of things. And my previous life on the Bloomington City Council worked very closely with our city clerk and our local elections administrators. And, I can tell you from what I've heard from them that typically during the early voting period, weekends can be really, really busy. They can often be just slammed with lines out the door, even in Bloomington's not by any means the largest city in the state. because that's when folks have time to go. And so from my perspective, looking at this from the dedicated public servants who administer our local elections, making it easier for them to do that, making sure that there is more opportunity for folks to go to spread that out so that our local elections administrators aren't so slammed, that they're better able to process votes during this early voting period certainly makes a lot of sense to me. And I haven't had a chance to speak with our city clerk, but I would suspect that our city clerk staff would agree. So I think this just makes a lot of sense in terms of elections administration and making it easier for everybody on sort of every side of that equation. So thank you for bringing this forward, and I'm looking forward to voting for it.
Thank you. Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think eventually I'm going to want to have the Secretary of State come down to try and kind of clarify some of this impact on employers. But in the
Maybe
meantime,
they could come down now just to be ready. But proceed with your
that
questions.
would be wonderful. Thank you, Representative Bajaj, for bringing this bill forward. Currently, is there anything that prevents an employer from letting an employee go to vote during this early voting period?
Representative Badger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Torkelson. According right now to the statute, it says very explicitly that it's on the day of that election. So an employer could say that, it's not election day, and so they could refuse you to go vote early.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but that's not my question. My question is there anything that prevents an employer from letting a person go now? I'm referring to Representative Purcell's remarks earlier, where she said it'd be great if employers can let their employees go vote during this early voting period. I believe that's the case today. If I, as an employer, choose to let my employee go vote during this time period, there's nothing in law that prevents that today. Is that correct?
Representative Badger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. An employer can decide that they would let someone go vote, but the protections aren't there on a day outside of Election Day. So what this does is clarifies that the protections so you wouldn't be penalized and you wouldn't have wages deducted.
Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank you, Representative Bajaj, because that's the way I understand it. There's nothing today that prevents an employer from allowing employees to go vote during this time. To the Secretary of State, if I may, Mr. Chair, can you describe the consequences for employers should a complaint come forward, either under the current law as it exists or with these changes in place? How does that complaint process work, and how often has it been enacted?
Please identify yourself for the record and then respond to the question.
Mr. Chair and Representative Julie Strother with the Office of the Secretary of State. Our office doesn't have enforcement authority over this statutory section. We often get a lot of questions about this leading up to Election Day, but we don't have enforcement authority over that, and I apologize, I don't have on hand what the penalty is, if there's a specific penalty associated with it, or if it's a default penalty in statute. And
Yes, thank you. I think House Research might be able to answer that.
Mr. Chair, Representative Torkelson, there's a misdemeanor penalty. Then it's directed, if there's a violation, that the county attorney of the jurisdiction would prosecute the misdemeanor crime.
Okay. Representative Torkelson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know that we have anybody here that can inform us as to just how often this is enforced or how it's enforced, but it would be information that would be very helpful. Just one more question, I guess, Mr. Chair. Is there anything that controls how many employees can go vote at the same time? Is that if my entire staff of employees comes and says, we want to go vote right now, do I as an employer need to say, yes, you can all go? And or does the employer have some control over how this process works within the workplace?
Representative Badger or Julie Strother.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Torkelson. Again, according to the fact sheet that was actually put out by the Secretary of State's office, your employer can ask that you tell them when you will be gone and ask that employees coordinate their absences to minimize workplace disruptions. So that an employer can ask for that.
Okay. Representative Torkelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that information. Mr. Chair, there are certainly some further questions and some misgivings about this particular bill. While
We certainly all support everyone having the chance to vote. We're not, I believe I'm not sure that this is completely ready for prime time. So I will be voting no this morning, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Torkelson. Any closing remarks, Representative Agbadje?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I urge that, you think about ways that we're continuing to expand access to the ballot box. We already have a long early voting period. We, have mail-in voting, and all this would do is just continue to clarify that you would have that protection to go vote early without having your pay deducted or any other penalizations for you at work if you go to vote during a workday during the early voting period. So thank you, and I look forward to your support.
With that, Representative Agbadje renews her motion that House File 799 be recommended to be placed on the general register. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Representative Agbadje.